So our next topic that we're going to have on here is all about making sure that we are helping our teachers prioritize what's important. We've talked about this a little bit in other things of it's not the technology, it's how you use it. And I love that whole opinion of don't just say, here's Flipgrid, I'm going to use it tomorrow. Have those important sessions. So if you guys have any questions about how to make sure that we're prioritizing technology, especially in this time of year, please leave those in the comments. We would love to have all of that stuff here. And once again, I want to say welcome to everybody. This is the Tech Coach Live virtual conference. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and I'm here as always with my co-host from Ask the Tech Coach, Susan Vincent. And we are joined today with Jennifer Marshall, and we're expecting a few other presenters as we are here. Jen, I got to ask you, you have an opportunity to work with several tech coaches around the country. When you're talking to tech coaches, what are you hearing the questions at? What are tech coaches asking for, and what do you see the tech coach role evolving into now that we're moving into this whole COVID system where we're half on, half off, all hybrid?
Well, I think, we think we're different because we're in different states and different districts. And I know I was kind of walled in. I went to school in my same district, taught in the same district. And then when I started working for NCC and traveling with the MIE expert program, I realized we're really not that different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's obstacles, their questions are very similar. So I think the biggest question is wanting some direction, from their districts, and hopefully they're getting that at this point, that they're getting some direction of tools to use and expectations and those sort of things. But then the next question is, where do I start? And I think the last couple of sessions lead into that. I know this one, helping teachers prioritize and focus, I think is just a continuation in some ways of those conversations we've had earlier, but just helping teachers to find that one thing that they're going to start with. For some people, maybe they're already comfortable with the tool. They did a little experience that in the spring or the summer. And so what are they going to do with it now? What's going to be your starting point? That's something in my district that we've tried to incorporate into any of our trainings is what's one thing that you can take away from whatever it is, where are you going to start with your students? And hopefully it's something not too big, but just what's the one tool you're going to grasp onto it and really become best friends with before you start looking for the next tool. It's okay. Less is more, I think, in this situation.
Let me throw this one at you here because, look, we're all hybrid. At some point, every teacher basically has a Chromebook or a laptop or something connected to them to reach students. I'm hoping that teachers are still keeping in mind that it's not about the technology. It's really first about that interaction with the student, that social emotional aspect. We keep talking about using the tool, not teaching the tool. But as a tech coach, how do we help our students and teachers get away from technology, at least for the first few weeks, and just focus on reconnecting as a classroom, as a school district, trying to feel out what a hybrid learning environment is? I know in my district, we're in that situation where a teacher will have both physical and virtual at the same time. I don't care about Flipgrid at that point. I just care about building a family unit with everybody who's been away since March. What advice do you guys have for teachers and tech coaches out there for just getting the band back together?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. And definitely, I think it's always important to build culture and that community in your classroom. It's definitely going to be a little trickier this year. But I think our students and our teachers, they need it more than ever because school ended so abruptly and unexpectedly at the end of last year that I think for a lot of students that left them feeling anxious. And so I totally agree that we need to spend those first couple of weeks just connecting with students. And of course, you're going to be using some tools for that. But really, it's more about the connection, making sure students are engaging in that online environment, whether that's a live meeting or using, the online platform independently, just really kind of keeping a list of who's engaging, how are they engaging? Do you need to reach out to certain students or families separately? Maybe a phone call, old school phone call, right? It doesn't have to be a video call. Just trying to reach them and see how things are going or what kind of supports do they need and utilizing the resources in your district. I know this situation has really brought a lot of administrators and leaders and just district staff, if you will, together. I see people helping out in areas that they never tried to help with before, not because they weren't helpful. It just, there wasn't the opportunity. People don't know how to help. But now we had emails, who can help hand out devices to students for an hour, in front of the district office. We've got families coming to pick up devices, and all kinds of people were helping with that sort of thing. So I think utilizing the resources in your district to help reach out to those students and do some fun stuff first. I think that will build the relationship with the teacher so that students feel comfortable in this space. It's going to be new for so many of us, but really keeping students at the forefront.
The whole social emotional aspect of things is something I'm happy to see a lot of companies start focusing on with their applications. And you and I both have something in common. We're both Microsoft Innovative Educators. I know Microsoft is doing an awful lot of work to try to bring in those SEL components. I saw the other day, Mike Tolfson put out a wonderful video on a new app,
Reflect,
in Teams. Tell us a little bit about that. That was awesome that they're doing these things.
Well, I only know this much. I think I probably saw the same Twitter post from Mike that you did. But yes, I think that's a formal, look to me like it's a formal application for students and teachers to just check in. How are you feeling about, your day? How are you feeling about that activity? But before that tool is even out there, and there's other tools, I think those are just questions you can post in the chat space of how you're communicating with students, or use a Flipgrid, use whatever to just check in. So it's not so much, what have you learned, but how are you feeling about it? What do you need help with, or what could you help others with? What are you feeling comfortable with that maybe you could support other students? And I think for our staff too, I heard somebody mention connecting educators across your building. We developed a team, Microsoft team in our district, really as a professional learning network to just say, hey, teachers, our digital integration team, there's 3 of us. We don't have all the answers, and we certainly can't support all 4,000 staff and 40,000 students in our district. So use each other. There are a lot of smart people in our district. And so ask for strategies, support one another. And we've seen some amazing things happen with there. And I really hope that continues through the year. So as we all start engaging in this space in a more formal manner with our students, that continues to help support that.
So it's not only about connecting with your staff members, it's about the teachers also doing that check with their students.
Yes.
If you're going through in the first week or two and you're starting to feel something, I think it's totally okay to have a conversation with your students to go, is this working for us?
Yes.
How can we change? What can we do? Whether you're comfortable or you're not comfortable, students and teachers are equal when it comes to this. This is all brand new to us. So what do we need to do to make them feel part of the learning process?
Absolutely. Bringing them in as a student, just like as the tech coaches, we try to bring in the teachers to, figure out what works for you, and what's going to work in my classroom is not going to work the same in Jeff's classroom. We're going to figure out what works for us and have those conversations and prioritization, if I can get my words out today, prioritizing what's important. As we integrate technology, is this working for our classroom? Is this an effective communication tool amongst us? Or is it not? Should we try something different? What can we do as a group, as a tech coach to teachers or teachers to students? How can we prioritize our needs to make it work for us and the environments they are? If you're on remote learning and they have all these different environments at home, what's going to be the best tool for the job? And that's what we want to kind of continue to talk about throughout this session here.
Talking today about helping teachers focus what the important tech integration pieces are. We want to welcome back onto a program here, Greg Bagby. Greg, when we're looking at the different technologies and we're trying to create, what is that first thing that we want to introduce? What is that first thing that we want to bring into our kids? I see answers like Flipgrid because it's a great video application. It's a great way to get the feet wet. What advice do you have as far as those first couple things, just to kind of, again, build a family support around the classroom? Is it Flipgrid? Is it a Nearpod? Is it something else? How do we start getting to know each other so that way technology just enhances those conversations?
I think you said it best a few minutes ago. I don't care about Flipgrid. I care about building those relationships. So focus on what we can do in order to build those relationships, how we can maybe even leverage some of the technology tools to build those relationships. I know earlier today there were folks talking about their Bitmojis. And I know, Susan, I think you said you're not into the Bitmoji classroom and all that, but it's been a couple hours, so it's okay. But Jess, I was working with a group just the other day, and I said, why don't you have the kids create their own Bitmojis? It was high school kids, so they already had them, and add them to the group and let them explain why they chose the different stickers to go on their pictures, or using other tools that the kids already know. Yes, even things like Snapchat. I know, bad words, but allowing the kids to use the tools that they're already engaged in and introduce themselves that way. Give them a little bit of ownership in the classroom, even in the digital hybrid environment. And then after they've delivered their tools or themselves on those tools, ask, how can we use this in our classroom? How can we use, I know, asking kids, student voice, who knew? But yes, I suggested to the teachers that they talk to the kids about what they can do and how they can bring in different aspects so that they can leverage the technology they're already using to enhance their learning and their school. I know that's a little bit different. It's not a flip grid. It's not a Nearpod, but
Well,
there you go.
But I think that's valuable. I think that's one thing we've had some conversations with teachers, that you can still use the technology, but you can also use low-tech situations. Take a picture of a piece of paper and upload it to Seesaw or Teams or Google or whatever it is. Like, even as some teachers have said, they prefer to just turn the camera on and they're still writing on a physical whiteboard. They're just videoing themselves. It doesn't have to necessarily be a digital whiteboard and everything in that digital space. It's okay to start that way. And in some instances, I think it's going to be even more important that we do a blend of, you know, you still may be virtual, you still may be online, but you can still bring in physical manipulatives or whatever it is when you're working with your students. It doesn't have to all be something that's 100% digital, and allow students that space too. So if they're struggling with, you know, maybe doing their math in OneNote, they could just do it on a piece of paper and take a picture and upload it, you know, in some way. I think as long as teachers are open to that and are willing to be flexible in how students are delivering the information, students are going to be good with that. And then, you know, maybe provide some support if the goal is really to help them use a specific tool with that. But what's more important, the students learning and their content and the connection with the teacher versus being an expert at a certain tool. And, you know, I think somebody mentioned we have to also recognize that students are going to be working from home, and every student's going to have different support if you're in that sort of situation. And so we don't want to mark a student down or put them in a situation where it's really the tool is the obstacle to communicating their learning. It's not the learning that might be missing, but in order to get the learning from the student delivered to the teacher might look different. And I think we just need to be flexible with that, and we're going to have to work through that.
Jen,
you know what piece? Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, Jen, that was something that I emphasized just in a training a little while ago when I was showing the teachers' kids, whatever, how to use immersive reader with their students. And they were like, but no, we want the kids to be able to do this on their own. They don't need immersive reader. They don't need tools like this. And I said, are we grading the kids on how well they use the tools? Or are we wanting to see what we've actually taught them? And even in this COVID era, we need to still meet the students at their point of need, whatever that may be, and then grow them to their potential. And it's always the tool. The tools are always secondary to the learning. We need to make sure that the learning takes place first, or that's our focus. And the tools are helping us maybe enhance, not necessarily teaching, unless you have a class that's teaching tools, which I did, but that's neither here nor there.
So, you know, a piece of advice I like to give to tech coaches, and I'll be the first one to admit this, it's not always about the technology, because, you know, as one commenter said below, you know, unfortunately, there's things that districts block and do not allow us to use. So sometimes you have to reprioritize and, you know, figure out something different. And as a tech coach, we need to model that behavior to our teachers of, if something's blocked and it's beyond our control, then what else is out there that we can do to make this project work?
Yes, and that's one of the things I would do every now and then, just because to show off, so to speak. I would fail in front of the teachers when I was working with them, so I could show them, oh, I forgot. The district has blocked this. We can't do that. So we need to figure out another idea. Maybe we can do this, because yes, at home, everything's open and I can get on, and some tools are blocked. And of course, there are times where I knew things were blocked, but I want the teachers to see that it's okay to fail. And it's, well, I know we talked about fail forward and all that. Well, not we, another group this morning. Yeah, it's okay to fail, and we need to be able to get teachers in the mindset that it's okay to try something, and if it doesn't work, it's okay to drop back and like the CEO of Microsoft, he said he wrote a book on it, hitting refresh. There you go. Just hit refresh and let's try it again.
So as tech coaches, okay.
No, I was just going to say that, and like you're saying, Greg, I agree. It's good for students to see that even teachers might, stumble here and there, and ask your kids to help you. How, they might have answers for you, but then also just to learn from that, right? We all learn from mistakes. Yes. And I think that's one thing. If you have an online meeting with students and there's some things that are a little chaotic, hopefully that drives them to figure out how to solve that piece of it. Now, maybe they know how to at least join with their kids online, but what are those components to help manage that space a little bit better? And so sometimes, it's not that we would ever want to set our teachers up to have an experience that they feel is chaotic. We want to try to start them off with what the information they need to be successful. But having that experience, if something is not working well, will hopefully drive them to figure out, well, what can I do to fix this? And honestly, in my role, that's how we oftentimes will work with our IT department. Are there certain things that we can control on the back end, so to speak, to make something smoother? And if that's agreed upon, then we can work through that. But we're not necessarily experts at any of the tools that are approved. It doesn't necessarily mean we know all the ins and outs. We got to see, what's happening when you're actually using that with students, or how can we make it better for everybody?
Yes.
So in our coaching role, our job is, of course, to be the advocate for what's happening in our classrooms. How do we use technology to move everybody forward? I'm assuming that just like last year, we have our go-getters and we have our resistors. I'm assuming we have that right now, whereas somebody who, even though they might have to be teaching in a hybrid or 100% virtual, you are going to have those teachers that are trying to do 9 million apps in a week, and you're going to have those people that are going, you really still can't make me do more than just the bare minimum with technology. Clearly, we're not in a situation where we can just walk into somebody's room who we know is a resistor. How do we really reach both of these types of people to say, no, don't go 900 miles an hour, because we might not be in their classroom realizing that that's happened. But at the same time, how do we then reach out to those people that are pushing back, don't get it, don't understand, and are still sitting here going, you can't make me? How do we handle both of these situations this year when it's going to be crazy?
It's a great question, Jeff. I think just doing our best to meet teachers where they are, spotlighting teachers who are maybe somewhat successful, but not in an overwhelming manner. And I say that because I know we've all worked with these sort of teachers who are awesome, but most of those teachers have spent time the past couple of years. They've taken time to get to where they are. And sometimes that can be overwhelming for a new teacher to see an example of a teacher who's really kind of, like you said, going 100 miles an hour and doing lots of things, but they've probably spent some time that we don't recognize, learning the tools themselves, integrating them with students, walking through all those ups and downs that are happening. And so one thing we've tried to do through some of those aspects I mentioned of how we're trying to connect teachers with one another is spotlighting and encouraging teachers in that space. They're asking questions, and my team will purposely sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we'll purposely not answer because we want to see if another teacher is able to support it and help them. And then I might chime in and say, thank you so much, Sue, for answering. Those are great ideas. I hope, you two will continue to connect. But I think that helps to build a different library, if you will, for teachers to see examples of colleagues across their buildings, all across our districts, of different levels. Because I think prior to this situation that we're in, it often, just because of the nature of how things went, those teachers who were that advanced level and sort of, it was maybe their hobby. They just love learning about these things on the weekends. And so they had a lot of knowledge about digital integration and were already doing that in their classroom. Those were the ones that were easy to point out. And those, everybody has them in their district where kind of everybody knows who they are because they're the techie ones and they've been doing these things for years. But I think now's the time to really highlight those that maybe aren't so techie, but they did something amazing. They learned a new tool. They learned how to set the meeting options when they're meeting online. And so now they're able to run a much smoother meeting. Highlight those teachers and help them connect with one another.
Yes. And one of the things that I love doing as an administrator is being able to see teachers, the high flyers, and having them not only connect maybe with some of the resistors, or I would have them work together and create a model or a module for the resistors using specific tech, some tech that I saw that the resistors could grab onto easily. And I would just say, hey, why don't y'all work together on this project? Or why don't you work together on this? And I always let the high flyers present at faculty meetings, just because if they're going 100 miles an hour, I wanted others to appreciate what they were doing. And when the resistors figured one thing out, I would highlight it. I would make a big deal out of it. Hey, y'all, Miss Earhart finally used, well, I wouldn't say finally, but I would say Miss Earhart did a great job today when she was using this tool in the classroom. And I always started my faculty meetings with accolades. And that was one of the places where I could put in, hey, this person, not saying this resistor who was stubborn, I finally got her to do this, but no, I would make them feel good about themselves and using the tech. Just this summer, I worked with a group of teachers and I said, okay, so this is basic computing 101 for teachers. And the teacher was like, so what does this mean? It's like, we're going to start with turning your computer on. Okay. Is that okay? Can you do that? And they're like, I can do that. So I may actually learn something in this one. So yeah, I started with just, this is our browser. This is what we click on. And I showed one lady how to copy and paste. And she said, you've changed my life. I was like,
it's the small victories. Yeah.
Small things.
We had that in our last district, and this is one of my victory stories of somebody who was very, very resistant to having a tech coach in, thought I was going to come in, rat her out because she didn't know how to do things. Had a wonderful conversation, but basically I had to take her level all the way down to, she whispered in my ear and she goes, I don't know how to share a Google Doc. I don't know what I'm doing. As soon as we hit that eye to eye, then we started a good, like 4 years, like BFFs after that, right? but we had to get down to I'm nervous that you as the tech coach are here because I know I have limitations. Admitting it is the first step. Can you help me?
Yes.
And then we move forward. And if you've had that as a tech coach, please let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you guys. And you can comment on Facebook, you can comment on YouTube. Tell us those stories, those memorable things, those teachable moments that you've had with your tech coaches and teachers. We would love to hear from you guys. Let us know that you're out there. Also tell us your Twitters. We would love to keep in touch with you guys. We've got a lot of great things happening here. And the most important thing I think we can do is to make sure that we're starting on the right track. Greg, as we're going through here, what advice do you have to teachers who are tech coaches that are trying to figure out the game of being a tech coach? In our next section, we're going to talk to some long day, guys. In our next section, we're going to be talking to some administrators about those tech coaching administrative relations. To preview that, what advice do you have, Greg, when you're trying to play that fence between being a teacher advocate and being an administrative helper person? How do you handle the administrative relationships and conversations?
I try to let the administrators know, well, for both of them, I let them know that I'm there for them and ultimately for the kids. But because of the work that I'm going to do with your teachers, I believe that we can move the needle on your whatever scores, be it ELA, math, whichever scores are needed. And I want to work with you so that we can make your school look better. And that's the conversation I have with principals. I always tell them I want to make their schools look better. And with the teachers, I want to make their scores look better, their students look better, but ultimately I'm in it for the kids. And after a while, they understand that, oh, wait, he just really wants all of our kids to rise. That's all I want. So I try to go in and let them think that I'm on their team solely for their benefit, and yet it's all about the kids.
And is that a conversation? Is that a Google form? Do you what does that look like?
I always have to have a conversation with the principals. I want to sit down and speak face to face with the administrators. I think I do a pretty good job of convincing folks of things when I can sit down and have a conversation with them. I usually try to do some recon and figure out what they need. And I try to play on their needs in the sense of, I can fill your need. This is how I'm going to fill your need. this is how we're going to make this relationship work in a good way. But it's not a Vito Corleone type of thing. It's just I'm working with them to. My bad. I'm just trying to.
There's not going to be a horse head in the principal's.
No, nothing like that. But it's just basically I want them to know that I am there to help them, and I will do what's needed in my job to help them better their school or better their teachers, all, of course, for the kids.
Jen, what advice do you have as far as building relationships, keeping relationships, and getting started with those, what can I do for you kind of conversations?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to how we build relationship with teachers, is meeting them where they are. I think that's one thing I've recognized in working with our administrators. A couple things I should say is we recognized early on that in order to make change in a building, it had to come from the top. Teachers needed to see their administrators integrating some of these tools for whatever way, to help build, whether it's student scores or just build communication and collaboration within a building. They needed to recognize that their principals were doing the same thing that we were essentially asking students to do. And so just starting where they are, I've sat with many principals and just helped them with putting their file structure, moving them into the cloud, off of a flash drive and into the cloud. And oftentimes they are embarrassed to admit that, right? They think, I'm a principal, I should be doing these big grand things in my building. But if they can recognize where they need to start, where their weakness is in order to move forward, and being honest, and just building that relationship with them. I've, like I said, sat next to many of those administrators, helped them with that step. And then once we get past a few of the basics, we're able to really start saying, well, how does that, what are your goals for your building? What do you want to do for your building? What do you want your teachers to be able to do? And so we actually had built out we called it an implementation plan. And it started with working with administrators and then moving down to including what we called a support team or a leadership team, kind of who are those high flyers, who are your strong educators or staff in your building. And it didn't have to be the most techie. We were just looking for leaders in the building. Who do you want to bring on that can help support the goals of the principal? Incorporated with digital integration. That's my lens of that. And then we moved on to teachers. What does the teacher training look like? And through all of that, we were always talking about how do you build sustainability in a building? Again, there's 3 of us. And we have 56 buildings. So I'm not going to be able to be in all 18 of my buildings, even, within a month. I'm not necessarily going to be there for a whole day. And of course, that looks different now. Much easier to pop in virtually, but really building that capacity in a building so that recognizing teachers will go and talk to an admin, or they'll walk across the hall and ask a question when they all start to realize that we're all in the same boat together. Our principal wants us to do A, B, or C. Maybe they're changing how they're communicating with their staff and requiring a few more things digital than just placing it in an inbox. And so recognizing that those teachers may not know how to do all of that, but building capacity in a building ties that in. And it takes a while. It's not something that happens overnight, but building that relationship with the small steps, and the more comfortable they are to pick up the phone and ask the silly question. I mean, no question is silly, but the small things to help them move forward really pays off in the long run.
Jen, I think you hit on something great that I forgot. One of the things I like to do as well is make the principal look good, in the sense of letting them use some new technology in front of the teachers that the teachers have never had before or never used, and sharing that with the principal so they could share it with their group. And I may have to go and show them how to use it, the ins and out, as in with the faculty, but giving principals a little bit of power, empowering them to have something that they can model to their teachers is huge. I actually do it with district leaders and district, what is she? Middle school. She's in charge of all the middle schools in the district. I'll give her some tools. Say, hey, why don't you use this? And same thing with our lead interpreter. Hey, why don't you use this? And show your folks how to use it. And it just empowers them and makes them look so much better, I think. And it makes them feel good about themselves.
Well, and I think it just shows too, if a teacher sees, we've been doing the same thing with some of our district leadership. We're actually trying to work with a few of them to just create a short little Flipgrid video that we can send out to staff where they can see the superintendent's face and the assistant superintendent's face, not just an email, kind of more formal, but make it a little fun. But I think if teachers can say, hey, they can use that tool, they must have had some training. So if they can use it, I can use it, and builds that community. I think it builds a community within the district that we're all on the same page. We're using the same tools, maybe for different purposes.
Yes.
But it starts to show that, yes, it's expected that we're doing this with our students, and you're able to also see that from your building principal, but also district leadership. That's awesome.
Well, guys, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today and being panelists here on Tech Coach Live. Sue, it has been a great day of learning for tech coaches, hasn't it?
Yes, very much. Great stuff, great sharing. I've learned some new things along the way. It's been awesome.
Jen, where can we find out about the great stuff that you're doing?
My Twitter handle is @JenMarshall0806. So that would be the best place to connect with me. Thank you, guys.
Excellent.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.